Taos audience holds you in the palm of their hands. Bienvenidos, and welcome to the book launch of our newest work, Dark Ladies and Other Avatars by Joan Ryan. And what a beautiful setting to have this book launch in. Don't you agree?
Yes.
If you haven't met, I'm Andrea Watson, founding publisher and editor of 3 at Taos Press. New York girls. That's it. We don't have to I fell in love with Dark Ladies and Other Avatars the moment I read the gorgeous poetry manuscript. When we think of Dark Ladies, we often imagine women with beautiful dark complexions, or perhaps long dark hair. In Joan's book, we're introduced to other dark ladies as well. Strong women with a certain interesting edge. Clever women with fascinating sensibilities. Dazzling temptresses. Exotic schemers. Subjects of famous artworks. Allusions to the bard. Renaissance women in full velvet regalia. And, oh no, harlots and hellions. When life presents these dark ladies with a challenge, they rise to the occasion. And if one attaches the word avatar to them, in Sanskrit, an avatar is the concept of the appearance or incarnation of a deity on earth. Well now. Personally, I love them all. The book then moves from persona to the personal. Poems of a sister who suffers from mental illness, a mother who remains charming and beautiful despite Alzheimer's disease, the memory of a father's hands as they played the piano, children and grandchildren and husband, a true family history. Finally, in such witty and profound ways, Joan completes the book with observations of daily life, marriage, growing up, and growing older. All of these sections collaborate to offer readers a passionate, luxurious, and moving book. By way of introduction, although I suspect most of the audience knows Joan, Joan lives in Taos, where she indulges her passions for skiing, mushroom hunting, and Mediterranean cooking, and above all, reading and writing poetry. Her recent poems have appeared in Atlanta Review, Nimrod, Ekphrasis, Calyx, Cold Mountain Review, Crab Orchard Review, the Taos Journal of International Poetry and Art, and other literary journals. Before moving to Taos in 2009, Joan headed her own direct marketing studio, where she created magalogs, commercials, and direct mail packages for clients ranging from Dow Jones to Lenox Collections to AOL to Rodale Press. During this time, she also served as president and chairman of the board of the Philadelphia Direct Marketing Association and as a speaker on writing that sells. And now I'm honored to introduce the poet of the evening, Joan Ryan.
So much. Andrea has been an unbelievable publisher, encouraging me from the very start, pointing out all the little things I overlooked and making sure that they were not there to embarrass me later on, putting everything just the way, helping me put everything just the way it should be. And I cannot believe that I have ended up with such a beautiful book that she produced. To start with this evening, I'm going to read the first Dark Lady poem I ever wrote, way before I ever thought that there would be a book based on that concept. And the speaker in this poem is the wife of Rip Van Winkle. Washington Irving presents her as the quintessential harridan, and indeed calls her a shrew more than once. But I've always felt that anyone who's had her husband away without any contact for 20 years after an evening of beer and bowling with the guys, must have another side to the story. Here, Dame Van Winkle speaks her mind. Others profit from his small acts of kindness. A toy soldier whittled from a dry stick, a heavy bucket carried home from the well. I wake beneath a leaking roof, sit at a shaky table, turn my daughter's dress till it can't be turned again. And you find me sharp-tongued, shrewish, a nag when I call him back from the green to mend my henyard fence or drag him from the tavern when the last cow wanders and the wood needs chopping before the fire dies. I was only 18 when I chose him. Charmed by the future I saw his smile, his unhurried gaze, the worlds beyond this sober valley he opened for me with his words. Such a web he wove with those words. How was I to guess at 20 years of absence? Empty talk of beery dreams, me gaunt and stooped at 40, hands rubbed red on neighbors' soapy linens, when I should have been dining on such cloths, provided for by a shop or trade. Perhaps a well-run inn, where folks would come to eat my food and hear the tales that keep me still beside him.
Oh, nice time.
Penelope, who waited at home for her husband Ulysses for 10 years, was...
Come on. What were we thinking?
She was courted by a number of suitors who were quite pressing. They stayed at her house, eating her food and drinking her wine night after night, pressing her to choose one among them. And she put them off by saying she couldn't make a choice till she finished weaving the shroud she was making for her father-in-law. It's the shroud which she wove by day and unwove by night. Penelope unraveled. It's the weaving that keeps her going, guiding the wool-wrapped bobbins through sheds of warp, making each color, Tyrian purple, crimson kermes, blue woad, saffron, madder, flow smoothly into the next, beating each row into place, forming patterns she learned as a girl, borders of chimeras, centaurs, satyrs, small geometric figures her practiced fingers knew, listening to her women talk of lovers, lambings, babies teething, recipes for dyes and bread. The borders grow too fast. For the gray-eyed goddess who lends wisdom to her hands, she invents her own motif, a row of the little owls that silently perch on stone roof tiles, just as daylight fades. Unweaving is harder, slower. Nights she sits alone in lamplit silence, picking out the hard-packed weft, its deftly braided ends of thread and tiny hairs that cling like wires, trying not to note thin lines of age and darkening veins below her bony wrists, the lessening flow of monthly blood, or how, despite steady undoing, the shroud continues to grow. When shadows crowd the close-walled room, she pulls the shawl from her shoulders and steps into the courtyard air, where no slow, steady rhythm of handwork keeps her from seeing her husband lying cold on a thorny hill, or as she catches a breath of white jasmine, warm in another's bed. I'm sure you all remember Sleeping Beauty, but few of us know the second half of the Grimm's Brothers fairy tale, where now a mother and a queen, Sleeping Beauty is left at home with her 2 children and a rather menacing mother-in-law while her husband goes off to fight a battle. Sequel. Dear Husband and King, I'm writing to you because I'm afraid someone is rewriting our story. Lately, your mother has been licking her lips and eyeing the kids rather strangely. And knowing her ogreish lineage, I fear she admires Daisy's round arms and Dawn's dimpled knees with other than grandmotherly affection. I know how important your war must be, but I'm worn out trying to make my lamb printanier and blanquette de veau tender enough to please her. Unless you return to the castle with haste, we're in imminent danger of losing, my dear, our happily ever after. The woman who sat for Leonardo's painting, The Lady with an Ermine. She's sitting facing forward, and in her arms she's cradling a long, strange-looking, weasel-looking animal. And her head is turned this way, almost as though she's looking over her shoulder. Her name is Cecilia Gallerani. And at this point in her life, she is 16 years old and the mistress of Ludovico Sforza, the most powerful nobleman in all of Italy. She is, according to all accounts, not only beautiful, but highly talented, a wonderful writer, a poet. She is at this point also 5 months pregnant, and although she may not know it, Sforza is about to leave her to marry a girl who comes from a much more powerful family. Cecilia Gallerani. Beautiful, he calls her, as a flower, and wants her with him always. Finds gifts to delight her. French passementerie for her gown. The velvet mantle with red slashed sleeves. A new viola di mano, perhaps from Brescia, confines her lightly as the net holding the hair to her temples, sheathing the luster only he may unbraid. He is Ludovico Sforza, Il Moro. Look how she wears him about her neck, a string of polished jade. And he is called Lermilio, too. See the ermine she caresses, fierce and preopic. The strength of her oversized, you think, hands. Does she boast she holds him, owns him, carries his child? Who does she see in the distance? And why does she look so sad? Long after the indolent hours of posing, after Sforza leaves her, before the portrait is dry, to marry Ferrara's pale daughter, and after Leonardo is reassigned to engineer the nuptial celebrations, and after the bride dies in childbirth, and Cecilia confides in her letter, "You would not recognize me today," the painting, long forgotten, is sent to Krakow, where Delacroix, who knows pourquoi, blackens the background, covering the window over her shoulder, so we'll never know who she and Leonardo saw. My sister was perhaps the darkest woman I ever knew, secretive from the time she was a child, and clearly schizophrenic by the time she was in her early 20s. And she dealt over and over with menacing voices. And when I would ask her, she always would say, "I can't tell you, I can't tell you." To the voices, who are you? And why do you haunt my sister? Forbidding her to walk through the park on Sunday, eat red berries, or repeat what you say. Why do you tell her I put drugs in her coffee, or plot to lock her out of the house? Do you enter her padlocked room through electrical outlets, smoke detectors, radios, or speak through the television she covers at bedtime, like the cage of a talkative parrot? Were you ushered in through family blood, a mutant gene, or untold horror? You have never once spoken to me. Yet I too have voices. Sometimes they say in my father's tone, "That was unworthy," or treat her more gently. But mostly they come when I write, to whisper a final line or advise me, "I'd never say it that way." Too often they chide me with silence. Do you know them? Are we all related? Barbara passed away 2 years ago, and we buried her remains in the old Hispanic cemetery at the end of Las Cruces Lane. Elegy in the Camposanto. Time fades your image, the anger, accusations, long silence, and I've come to ask if you are at rest. That small fence we built between your rose granite stone and the neighbor's junk pile, does the talisman blue paint we used keep you safe from the voices now? It's snowing, and by twilight, this old Spanish cemetery where we planted you in gaudy October will turn to silver print. In an hour, new snow will blanket the teddy bears and Barbies left for lost children. Tin rakes and spades set out for gardeners. How lightly the snow falls. How slowly it veils grave markers and winter stubble, plastic sunflowers and peonies, even the spurs and sombreros, transforming all to white offerings. Well, we got the rest of the family in, so I might as well get Dad in too. He played the piano, or sort of the way I write poetry, into the night. Moonflowers. In age, my father lived in pain and railed against an ill-tuned world. But just before the end, when I'd visit overnight and the rest of us had gone to bed, he would sit at his piano and play into first light. Filaments of his jazz would wind into my room, loop, stop, and loop again. A few brief notes unfurled, a breaking off, and then the tender song I could not place before it bloomed into a riff, scattered, sent out fresh shoots, turned and counter-turned, twining under and over a melody it teased, but never touched until the night and the moonflowers closed. My mother was also a very close-kept woman. Not a close-kept woman. She was very, almost secretive, but she was a very happy person, an extraordinarily kind person, and one who always seemed to get what she wanted, who knew what she wanted, and always seemed to get it. This is 3 weeks after I lost her last January. Despite the piling obligations of death certificates and thank yous, I stand at the sink polishing silver, a task I've avoided for years, caught between self-reproach and resenting the tarnish staining my unclipped cuticles. Yet I no sooner finish drawing the Art Nouveau vase I keep over the fireplace, a Victorian cake knife last used for your golden anniversary, and a dull-bladed repoussé carving set, then I dash about drawers and cabinets, gathering more favorites. The mysterious grillwork drum with cranberry glass liner. Sugar bowl, creamer, and candlesticks you received for your wedding, and a handful of archaic cutlery handed down from your mother. How I coveted that olive spoon with its star-pierced bowl, the long skinny oyster forks, and fiercely pronged fork for pickles, when, as a child, I'd help you remove each piece from its gray flannel pouch once a year, bring it back to original gleam, and repack it same day unused. And I delighted years later when you gave them to me. Now I feel mostly guilt for nearly 10 years of ignoring the obligation that came with these gifts. So I polish a little harder to remove the last stain from the cheese scoop, thinking, I do this for you, until I hear a silvery ring as you say, don't be silly, just pass that stuff down to your granddaughters, and rub some oil of Olay on those hands. Page is sticking. next poem, Memento Mori, is to one of the most powerful avatars that young girls seem to have, the mysterious Barbie. Back in the day, these Barbies had power careers: news anchor, data diva, executive, princess. Then, after settling in with my granddaughter, they lost their microphones, pink computers, and tiaras. Spent their prime switching outfits, rearranging hair, primping for dates, and echoing profundities like, "Damn, I can't find my keys." Dismissed now, they lie about in a box, bosh naked, undressed, arms twisted, legs splayed, menaced by boys' toys. Bird monster, beaked helmet head, hair demon, reptilian dogs, and other odd exiles, cast down from the garden of earthly delights. And this poem is dedicated to the oldest of my three gorgeous red-headed granddaughters, to Lila. Redhead. At night I plait Lila's hair, wet and the color of damp earth here in the Sangre de Cristos. In the morning, as she combs it out, Botticelli's Venus rises, and Flora steps out from her wall in Pompeii. Where does it come from, this pheomelanin, source of our granddaughter's pre-Raphaelite glory? We review family histories, find chestnut, walnut, and honey, even one strawberry, but no copper or auburn gleams through our memories. Your science books say recessive genes for red hair can hide in our 16th chromosome, awaiting their perfect mates for countless generations. And with pride of authorship, you point to an altar boy father from Cork, a half-Scottish mother. But I, from an older tribe, claim glints of red in my father's sideburns, and a faint russet haze in Polaroids of my 4-year-old self, as evidence of distant descent from the house of Jesse, children of David, ruddy and beautiful continents. These pages, I thought I set them up so that wouldn't happen. In Barcelona, and somebody here should remember where this came from, might. Just as they... What? Just as they'd emptied their third glasses of cava and mopped up the sauce from the anguilas and garlic, he licked the last drop off her little finger and passed her the tissue-wrapped box of rose gold hoops from Moscow's. And after the waiter crumbed the table and cleared the bottle, before the figs and cheese, she blushed her way back from the damas and handed him under the table a small damp ball of black silk. This poem, I'm now going to read the Valentine that I wrote for my husband, who is homesick in bed from airplane-acquired bacteria. It was a Valentine to him last year. And some of you might recognize that it steals a little bit from his favorite poet and one of mine. Oh my gosh. How did I... Oh, help me.
Call us at midnight. It's fine.
What?
You call us at midnight.
I'll call you at midnight. Okay, you'll all know as soon as I tell you. Who in his poem, Le Monocle de Mon... Wallace Stevens. If you stop thinking about it, it comes to you. Wallace Stevens, who in his poem, Le Monocle de Mon Oncle, is lamenting the fact that he has just turned 40, and love is really the reserve of the very young, at least passionate love. And in fact, he speaks of himself and his paramour as two warty squashes hanging on the vine. So, past meridian. When I saw you first, my fiery boy, I craved you for your iron thighs, that steady heart and honest gaze. But now that we've survived 5 decades of life's mire, and those shanks have shrunk to fit within my aging compass of desire, I far prefer a tender lie, a crooked leer, your calculated wicked ways. While distended we may be, and wrinkled too, we hang together on our vine, and as every waynophile knows, raisins make a fine, rich wine. If at 40 amours shrink, what at 60 shall I say to you who still outride me through the night on this bright winter morning after?
Whoa, whoa.
And reading tonight is also dedicated to my husband. Wait till the rains stop. Don't go yet. Storms in this valley are brief, and I need to see where you planted the garlic, the lilies, and key to the safe, how to open the fireplace damper and shut the flue in spring. Tell me again about the ride to my Sinai, the sidecar and donkey, the girl in the artichoke cart, the thin white scar on your eyebrow, and the rest of the marionette's tale you started the night we slept on the beach. It's early, and the road through the gorge is slick, so let me bring out the goat cheese and olives, the last of the rosemary bread, and that bottle of Nuit Saint-Georges we brought back from Beaune in November. Don't go yet, while so much remains untold. Stay at least till the rain ends, and what happens next unfolds.
That was one of the best readings I've been to in years. I'm so glad she's mine.